What do you say? Let's have a show right now. Yes, right now. Because it is Monday night, June 15th, I think, of 2026, 9 p.m. in the 9 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States. That is when this live show happens. And I hope everybody has had a fantastic week. The time goes so fast. We're already halfway through June. I don't know where it goes. I'm hoping the time goes somewhere nice. Anyway. But I have a fantastic show lined up for you tonight. There was no show when this day started. And but I got it done. I put together the itinerary, my outline for tonight, while I was watching soccer. The World Cup has started, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And I even worked ahead today and started recording Friday's episode. That's really, really early for me. Usually I don't get started on that till like Tuesday night or Wednesday. Look at me. But yeah, I got the show done, even though there was nothing at the beginning of today. Usually I start on the live show, maybe started putting together like on Saturday. And for some reason, I just did not get around to it. While you are watching tonight or just listening, whatever you may be doing, maybe you're driving, maybe you're on the treadmill, or who knows what you're doing. There are a variety of ways you can support what we do here at Unfound. Patreon.com/Unfound podcast. You can go to YouTube, or maybe you're watching on YouTube right now. You can hit the join button below. You can go to paypal.me/Unfound podcast. And then if you are in the chat on wherever you may be tonight, you can hit the super chat button and you can contribute as already my nephew Charlie has done. Thank you, Charlie. You can contribute that way, and any of course amount I consider to be very, very generous. As for the topics that I can assure you I will get to tonight, you can see them in the title for the show. First of all, Peter Madison. I'm going to analyze this disappearance. You're going to find it very interesting how I even decided to pick out his disappearance for tonight. I'm sure none of you have ever heard of his disappearance. Fairly obscure, and you're going to be like, well, what is this, Ed? Well, I'm going to explain, like I said. It's very fitting. You'll find out in a bit. Also, I want to talk about Genelle Bradford. This is actually a Pittsburgh area disappearance that she was found recently. And she was murdered, so now they got to figure out who killed her. But it's a very interesting story, and one more reason why families should just not give it all over to the police and say, yeah, they know what they're doing. Because this is, it's a little hard to figure out what exactly went on here regarding the investigation. And then also, I'm going to get to Unfound's Strangest, and this comes from a supporter or listener of Unfound who posted, put a post in the discussion group on Facebook this past week regarding what do you consider some of Unfound's strangest cases, the ones that really caught your attention. And unfortunately, some of the people who answered did not follow the rules of the post. But I am going to go through some of the answers, and I'm going to give you some of my own. You know how I shy away from superlatives. So I'm going to try to answer what this poster put in there. But for me, it's always along the lines, the ones that I think are very hard to analyze and to come to a very clean, very quick, no frills solution. So we're going to take a look at the answers that people, what people respond, how they responded, and then I will respond to this post in my own way. And of course, I have several other topics that I may or may not cover tonight, but always got to have, always like to come to this microphone with more information than I think I'm going to need. We don't want the last 10 minutes or 15 minutes of this live show, me just, twiddling my thumbs. And then, of course, also before we are done, I will tell you about this upcoming Friday's episode. So what has gone on since we all got together a week ago? That would have been June 8th of 2026. Well, first of all, the World Cup has started. It started last Thursday. And as I don't think that I have missed a match yet. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm sitting right there in front of the TV, not doing anything. But what I'm saying is the TV has been on, the soccer's been on. Sometimes the volume is on, sometimes it's not on because I have other things to do that require my concentration, and a volume of everything from the TV or whatever gets in the way of that. But I have caught every match so far. Just like with the Winter Olympics, I caught most of what was going on with the Winter Olympics, although I'm not much into the ice skating. And then even going back, to, of course, to like the World Championships in track last year, and then the Olympics the year before that, on and on and on. I do like to catch these events, and there was of course, some big soccer tournaments last year as well. It's something that I really get into, and given that I do get to work from home and make my own hours, I do try to partake in these things, and probably can partake in them much more easily than most people. But that doesn't mean the volume's on. That doesn't mean I'm watching 100% of the time. It's on, and look up, watch for a little bit, go back to my work. Even when I was recording Friday's episode, not all of it, but quite a bit of it, this evening, I had the soccer on in the background on mute. Really was not always a soccer fan. In fact, if you follow me privately on Facebook, my private page on Facebook, you can go back several years and find me making fun of soccer. But I have to tell you that soccer has won me over. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm into the Premier League over in England and watching those matches, or, the Italian league or whatever else. But I've really gotten into the men's and women's teams for the United States. And I've also gotten into watching any games between countries. Of course, that is what the World Cup is. So when countries are playing each other, and the United States is whoever playing, what they call, whether it's kind of exhibition, like what they call friendlies, or when it's real competition, like the World Cup, I'm into it. Like, I've not missed a United States men's soccer match in at least a few years. And even though a lot of those, it really wasn't a real competition, still, I'm going to watch. I'm going to know who the players are. I want to see the United States do well in everything that it does. I'm always rooting, for my country at the Olympics or wherever else. And so I've gotten into soccer. That's kind of drawn me in. And, I would not say that I'm as big a fan as I am of baseball. Like, baseball, I'll have that on. I have the MLB package on my TV here. But soccer has certainly moved up into a place where, I want to watch the United States men's team as much as I want to watch the Pittsburgh Steelers during the NFL season. It's gotten to be that. Why is that? I don't know. Most Americans, of course, could care less about soccer, although it does seem that given that the World Cup is being played here, there is huge viewership, a lot of support. The men, when they played in LA last Friday, the stadium was packed with mostly Americans. And so it's all good. A lot of celebrities were there and everything. So I think with the thing with Americans when it comes to soccer is that, of course, they call it football everywhere else in the world, is that Americans can get into it and will get into it if the teams are good. Just like with the women's. The women get a lot of support in the United States. Of course, the women have been number one in the world for a long time now. Of course, they've won World Cups going way back to 1999. And there's a lot of support for the women's game in the United States. A lot of girls idolize, women's players much more than boys idolize the men's players. But for soccer overall, if you're good, Americans will come. And the problem, of course, has been that, at least for the men, they haven't been bad. But, and they've won the tournaments like that have played right here in this part of the world, what they call CONCACAF against Canada, Mexico, Costa Rica, and everything. But for Americans, I think to take the men's team seriously, they have to consistently beat, the powerhouses of the world: Argentina, Spain, England, Germany, teams like that. And they just haven't been able to do that consistently. But I really believe, I absolutely believe this, that if the men's team, and they had a spectacular game last Friday, some saying the best game they've ever played at a World Cup. And I watched it. It was fantastic. But I'm telling you, if the United States men get as dominant as the women have been, or even close to that, you're going to see soccer in the United States become a lot more popular, and it will rival basketball and baseball and American football. I believe that. But they have to be good. If they're just going to be middle of the road and they're just going to be ranked 15th in the world or something, that's just not going to cut it. Americans just have too many other pastimes and sports to take an interest in. Whereas with the rest of the world, soccer is the number one sport. But here in the United States, of course, we have basketball and baseball and really American football, other sports to have our attention. But it's spectacular. I love watching it. I love people coming to the United States and, these foreigners that are coming here and doing videos about what they're encountering for the first time. A lot of them coming to the United States for the first time and going into fast food restaurants and Walgreens and Buc-ee's and seeing how we live and everything. It really, really cracks me up. And going to Waffle Houses at 1 a.m. and everything, it is really funny to watch people who are coming here for the first time and experiencing some of these things, because it's so different than what they have in their own countries, like the Walmarts and how big our grocery stores are. And when you go, like this one woman went in and was saying, like, she's from England, I guess. and you can buy like 1,000 pills of ibuprofen all at one time. And she was saying, like in England, the packs are no bigger than 16 or something. And she was just, I can't believe I could do this. And then while, of course, she was in this Walgreens or wherever, of course, it's not just a pharmacy. You know, you can buy food in there. You can buy candy in there. You can buy clothes in there. You can buy books in there. You can buy alcohol in there. You know, it's all this stuff. It's a pharmacy and then some. And that's really rare. And so it's really interesting for them to see all of these things and eat, you know, eating barbecue for the first time. It's pretty funny. So, and, you know, I don't know. Of course, I've only been to Canada a lot, but really it's not that much different than the United States. But, you know, I've never been to Europe or Asia or anything to really experience really, really, really big differences. So, but I'm enjoying it. Love the World Cup. It's going to be going on for several weeks. I think so far it's been a success. And the matches, except for one blowout, Germany killing Curacao. Other than that, I think the soccer, the games have been very, very compelling, including the United States really kicking Paraguay, but last Friday, and a lot of high hopes out there. A lot of high hopes. If you're not into soccer, fine by me. I know there's a lot of Americans who they look at like even the Olympics as being a big waste of time and everything. I have to tell you, I'm not like that. I love the Olympics. I love the World Cup. I know there's a lot of corruption and things that go along with that. But as I told one of my fellow trivia teammates on Saturday, because he was talking about this, and I wasn't trying to be smart, but you know, the fact is one of the most corrupt sports organizations in the world is the NCAA. You're right here in the United States, but Americans just accept it. You know, they watch, they love their college teams and everything. NCAA is just one of the most corrupt organizations out there. So we don't have a lot of room to talk. I was not trying to be smart. I was just half joking, half serious with them on that. But we just, you know, we just have to remember that. So World Cup, all good to me. I'm going to continue to watch. I love it. United States plays again on Friday. In fact, I think I'm going to go somewhere and watch it where a bunch of soccer people are hanging out. I haven't picked out a place yet, but there are parties here in Pinellas County where they have soccer at some establishments and everything where you can go and hang out with other soccer fans, American soccer fans. I think I'm going to try that out. So let's see who is in here, and then I will continue. Hello, Nephew Charles. What's going on? I'm a dinosaur. Good to see you. I'm a human. So there you go. Hello, Amy. Fishing, finally checking in. You got here early. Good to see you. New stuff kept showing up. Ugh, fishing. I'm not sure what that meant. Hello, Michelle. What's going on? Lisa, almost time. Good evening, Ed. Yeah, that's a little bit ago, back at 9 o'clock. Thank you, Charlie. Nephew, you're very generous. Hello, Ed. Hey, chat. Glenn, always love getting your emails, Glenn. Thank you. Mary, good to see you this evening, just like I saw you last night in the think tank. Hello, Alicia. How are you? D, that's okay. D, you're allowed to be late. DD, Ron, what's going on? Definitely hockey over basketball. Yeah, you know, once again, you know, with hockey, and hello to you, the cake. You know, with hockey, not a big hockey fan. Just not. I've tried to get into it. I'm from Western Pennsylvania. Hockey is huge there. The Penguins consistently have the best TV ratings of all of the hockey teams in the NHL. And I remember when they got their first Stanley Cups back in the early 90s, back to back and everything. Just have never been able to get it. I think Sidney Crosby is a fantastic person, fantastic athlete, one of the best to ever play the game. Evgeny Malkin and all of that, and all the connections that the Penguins have to like the Olympic teams and everything that the United States has had. I just can't get into it. I don't know. Maybe just because I hate the cold. I don't know. But yes, Michelle, but the United States into hockey, it's still considered to be a Canadian sport. But I will tell you once again, because I am an American, it was a huge thrill back in February when they won that, whatever it was called, the Winter Classic or whatever it's called. It was the Olympics. That's right. It was the Olympics. I'm sorry. When the United States beat Canada in the Olympics, that was awesome. But once again, I'm not a hockey fan. I'm just rooting for the United States because that's my country. That was fantastic. And overtime, that was great. That was quite a spectacle. Lisa, Ed looks nice. I do look nice tonight, Lisa. Thank you for noticing. I do look spectacular. Thank you for Lisa for noticing. Michelle, did I watch Australia? I did watch Australia. And I think it's going to be a fantastic game on Friday between the United States and Australia. Even though I know the United States in a exhibition match, the end of last year, the United States beat Australia. I think it's going to be a great match, and that's be 3:00 Eastern time in the United States on Friday. Should be a good time, Michelle. Australia really surprised people, beating, I guess they call it Turkey A or Turkey. They don't call it just Turkey anymore. I think that was a real upset. So I think it's really going to be very interesting on Friday. Of course, I'll be rooting for the United States, but I would have nothing against Australia also making out of the group and being able to go on to the next level of the tournament. That would be fine with me. So moving on to other competition, my trivia teams last Wednesday. We did okay last Wednesday. We got the final question. Did not finish in the top 3, but I think, we are in the top 5. And so we are in a playoff position. Only one more week to go, of course, 2 days from now. And we're quite a few points ahead of second place or 6th place. But mathematically, if things go really bad on Wednesday, we could lose our 5th place spot and not make the playoffs. But I don't think that's going to happen. But we're in 5th place, just a few points behind 3rd and 4th place. So who knows what can happen? But we had a nice night, not a great night. I think we ended up finishing like 6th or something like that last week. But there's that. But on Saturday, my other trivia team at Sharks, we won again pretty easily. So, but I do have to admit, on Saturday, my opinion, not as competitive as on Wednesdays. For example, when I go and play on Wednesdays, there's usually like 30 teams there and 130 people, if you can believe it. It's crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. And my team consistently, this new team that I'm on consistently, finishes, top 7, which is pretty good. Of course, the old team that I used to be on, we used to finish like top 3 every week. It was pretty sick. But on Saturdays, it's usually more like 10 or 12 teams, maybe about 50 people, maybe not even that. So you just have to realize that. But on Saturday, we won again fairly easily. And we didn't even get the final question. It was another final question. Nobody knew what the answer was. So, but still, we ended up winning. So that was nice. And anything else? Getting my car worked on again. I dropped it off this morning. Not sure when I'm getting it back. They didn't call me all today. I don't know. I don't need it anyway. But, I got some work done on a couple weeks ago. It was fine. There's a little clunking going on over some bumps and turning the steering wheel, probably a strut issue or something. The car is 15 years old. So I have them looking at that because, like I said, not all the time, but when I turn the wheel, you get this pop. It's not, not dangerous or anything, but that is surely a sign that something like in the front suspension is kind of worn out. So we're going to get that fixed. And luckily, with where I take the car, I can walk home. It's like 4.5 miles. So I get my steps in for today by first thing this morning, dropping the car off and then walking the whole way back here. Like I said, it's like 4.5 miles, maybe 4.25 miles. And I'm able to walk it in about an hour and 15 minutes. I'm really not walking that fast. So car getting worked on, was running fine. Love it. Love my car, loving it. And just want to get it where, no more pops, no more weird noises or anything. And then we'll be all good. The air conditioning in it is fantastic. I'm already finding that out. Way better than in my Sonata, probably because the interior of the car is smaller and, it's a little, the roof line's a little lower. So there's not as, the windows aren't as huge and everything. That certainly makes it easier for the air conditioning to do its job. But it'll freeze you right out of the car if you let it. Because if it's been humid, it's already been pretty hot here. Pretty hot. And I should know, I've been going out, getting a little sun every other day, although you can't see it on my face because I cover my face up. Just soaking in the vitamin D and finding a way to relax for a little bit. So there you go. That's what's been going on in my life since we all got together last. All right, so let's move on to tonight's show. And I did post it up above. If any of you want to ask me any questions tonight, anything that comes to mind, of course, the Q&A episode came out about a month ago or something, but you have any additional questions about anything that you'd like to ask me, true crime related or not, that's fine. I will try to fit it in the next hour and a half. I'm going to start with actually one of the things on the list, and that is Unfound's Strangest. This is posted in the discussion group a couple days ago. Really liked it. Always interesting to me to see what people are thinking out there and cases that catch your episodes, that catch their attention. And so we're going to take a look at that question right now. And the name of the person who posted this, Charlie Atkin. I think the Charlie, though, is a woman. Sorry if I'm getting that wrong, but I think so. But the question was, what is the strangest, once again, Charlie's words, what is the strangest unsolved case Unfound has covered? Now, like I said, some people did not follow the rules. And some people put in it like Jennifer Kessie. Of course, that is not a disappearance that has been featured on the podcast. Certainly one that I've talked about maybe 6 or 7, 8 or 10 times since the live show got started 9 years ago. But that has not been an official Unfound episode. And in fact, even when I've talked about it in this live show, I've not analyzed it like I've done, this new thing that I started like a year ago, like I'm going to do tonight with Peter Madison. So it's usually been because there was Jennifer Kessie's name was in the news, an anniversary or something like that, and I felt compelled to talk about it. But some people put Jennifer Kessie. Some people just don't like to follow the rules. So I'm going to take a look at some of these answers and comment on them. And of course, if you are in the chat tonight, if you would like to make your, answer the question yourself, please do. Of course, the question once again was, what is the strangest, quote unquote, unsolved case Unfound has covered? Put your answers in the chat. Here are some of those answers. Jason Jolkowski. This is certainly one that I have commented on myself. This would certainly be one once again, me looking at it, I don't like to think in terms of strangest. You can think in the word the if you want to define it that way for you. I don't think that's appropriate for me. I just tend to think of it, what are the ones for me that are the toughest to analyze? And certainly Jason Jolkowski's, I've said it many times. Tough because Jason, at least the way we understand him all these years later, of course, it's 25 years now. The way we understand who Jason is that really did not have a lot of qualities in his life that would make it likely that he would go missing. Wasn't involved in any abusive relationships. Of course, he was living at home, but didn't seem to have any problems with his parents, didn't have any addictions, didn't have any mental health issues. Yes, he had a learning disability, and certainly that is something that I keep track of on the Unfound database, just as a point to do it. But does having a learning disability make it more likely that you're going to go missing? I don't know if there's causation and correlation, other than to say maybe if somebody knew that Jason had a learning disability, and that's kind of the idea that I've put forth all these years. But still, very, very difficult to analyze. He's in a neighborhood that I would not say was a risky neighborhood. It was the neighborhood that, where he lived, where he grew up, and lived there for many, many years. It was daytime. A lot of things put together does not make it very likely that he would go missing, but he did. And then you have included in that his younger brother answered the phone pretending to be him for some reason. Maybe that's just what the younger brother always did. And you should know Jason's mother, although she had Project Jason, she doesn't do that anymore. Really not involved in the missing persons community at all, as far as my knowledge. Certainly would like to talk to, being that Kelly, his mother, doesn't do any media anymore, even though I interviewed her very, very, very early on in Unfound's existence. May be interesting to talk to Jason's younger brother. I don't know if he's ever, of course, he would be 25 years older now. How old was he at the time? 15, 14, 13, somewhere in there. So he'd be close to 40 now. Has he ever done any media regarding his brother's disappearance? Not to my knowledge. Do people who know him wherever he is now even know that his brother went missing? Don't know. So, and I want you to know, I've never attempted to reach out to him, just so you know. But certainly Jason Jolkowski, in my opinion, deserves to be on this list. As you would imagine, Tom Brown, very popular answer for this topic. To me, not really. Of course, Phil Klein and others would say otherwise. Of course, some people who answered in here would say otherwise. Not that difficult of a disappearance to analyze for me all these years in. Now 10 years in. Remember, Tom Brown's disappearance was featured on this podcast. Unfound wasn't even 3 years old yet. In fact, it wasn't even 2 years old yet, if you can believe that. We're now coming up on 10 years. Where does the time go? That episode came out in the summer of 2018, almost exactly 8 years ago. My mother was even still alive. In fact, that interview that I did with that on that radio show with that radio host in Texas, that was when I was seeing my parents up in South Carolina. I did that interview from there. To me, certainly, people think it's mysterious or strange. I think Tom Brown's disappearance is fairly straightforward. Hello, D. Weren't you already in here as one person and then came in as another? I saw Taylor, and now you're coming in as D. I'm getting all confused, D. What are you doing to me? What are you doing to me? So, Jason Jokowski, Tom Brown, of course, some family members represented their own disappearances in here. So I had Laura Buck and my very now close friend Lisa mentioning, of course, their brother Chip Campbell, who went missing up in the panhandle of Florida in 2016. As you know, once in a while, Lisa and I get together. In fact, we just got together some months ago, and I had a great time getting together with her and talking. It's always great to see Lisa. Chip Campbell, no offense to Laura or Lisa, or anybody else in their family. Once again, not a disappearance that I would say is overtly difficult to analyze, or it's this big question mark. Very, very sad that it's still unsolved. Very sad. But not what I would say overtly difficult to analyze, where like anything is possible. Certainly not like Jason Jokowski's, in my opinion. Another disappearance that was represented by a family member, Julianne Gillette. Her daughter Tammy got in to say Julianne Gillette. She's been missing since 1985. Certainly, I want her disappearance solved as well, but I don't find it to be, as the poster said, strange. And I don't find it that difficult to analyze. I will easily go on record in saying that the man in Julianne's life did something to her and then tried to stage it like she left him and leaving her purse far away in a hotel. I don't think I mean, certainly, I wouldn't bet my life on it. I'm guessing there's a little wiggle room in there, but I think that Julianne's disappearance, fairly straightforward. That doesn't make it easy to solve. That's not the standard. That's not what I mean. And then Joyce Rivituzzo, if Joyce is in here, I know she watches the live show on Monday nights. She talked about, of course, her daughters, Peggy and Patty. Once again, not. I don't think there's much of a. I don't find it to be strange. I don't find it hard to analyze, but still, all very sad. And I hope I'm describing my attitude toward these disappearances correctly. Of course, their disappearance is connected to an unsolved murder, still unsolved. And then somebody put her sister, Kelly Berg Dove. That is not a disappearance that has been featured on Unfound yet. But if Elaine, you're out there, you're more than welcome to contact me at unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. And then another family member, Ashley Summers. Not, once again, not strange. I think certainly that family member unfortunately murdered Ashley, I think, on that. Jeff Hammer in the group says Marina Bolter. Now, this is interesting to me. I would not call her disappearance strange. But it is a little hard to analyze, as Jeff writes himself. Just so many suspects that in another case would be the prime suspect. Absolutely true. I think Jeff captures the essence of Marina Bolter's disappearance very well. So, Jeff, if you're out there, well done. It's true. Marina Bolter, she was dating a married guy. She was living in an apartment building where a violent guy, I don't know if he was a murderer who was out of jail, but a rapist or a guy who'd been in jail for rape or something like that, lived on the same floor as she did. And then she was dating or had a boyfriend who was a married guy, but then she had a guy in her life who might have been the father of her children who saw her earlier that evening. And then on top of that, some other guy drove her home that evening that she went missing. And that does make, I don't know if it's one of my top ones, but certainly all of that put together makes it tough to analyze. Certainly tough. And, really, really narrow it down to one solid choice. You got like four choices there. How do you narrow that down? Hard to say. Hard to say. I haven't looked at my notes for Marina's disappearance. I have them in one of these computers around here. That could go back. And unfortunately, Marina's mother, who was the guest, died some years ago. It's tough. Not an easy selection when you have all of these men who would make good suspects orbiting Marina like that. So, Jeff, I think that's a solid choice. Maybe not one of my top ones, but a solid one. Faith says Brian Schaefer. We've been over Brian Schaefer on and over and over and over. To me, not that difficult to analyze. I guess a good friend of the podcast, Kelly, would, of course, the guest for that episode would say otherwise, probably, and that's fine. But I still think this Brian Schaefer is simply a guy who got drunk and stumbled off. Doesn't necessarily mean I know where he is, but I don't think any other choice has as much likelihood as that one does. I think. Of course, people believe he started a new life, and was he murdered to get picked up the wrong person? A lot of ideas out there, but the odds say that Brian might have tried to walk home and went the wrong direction, and you have to start looking at the person. He didn't want to be a doctor, and all these could have been depressed. His mother just died, on and on and on. Those all factor in. All of that has to be considered. Just not really a top one for me. Thomas gets in with the Springfield 3, not disappearances that have been featured on the podcast yet. Certainly would not rule that out. But then Rebecca Hester Key in the discussion group mentions Joe Bushling. And this is one that I don't. If you remember, a guy who investigated it himself, he's now a sheriff or somebody in some other jurisdiction. But at the time, he had worked as a private investigator or something on Joe Bushling's. Remember, he was the guy that was on that military base out in the middle of nowhere in Utah, and he took off with somebody else's car, and it ended up getting stuck or something. Certainly one that has a lot of moving pieces in it. To me, not overtly difficult to analyze. I still believe that Joseph Bushling might have been on something, and then he got, the car, did he run out of gas? And then he might have been trying to walk back to the base, but it was thunderstorms that night. I think he got washed away. He's out in the desert. There's flash floods that happen in the desert all the time. I think that's what happened to him. And I'm pretty sure about that. But it's an interesting choice by Rebecca. Susie comes in with Dale Kerstetter. Certainly unique. I don't know if that makes it strange. I don't even find it that hard to analyze. To me, I don't have much doubt that situation where somebody approached Dale about, hey, I got this plan. You work there. I'll pretend to break in here. I'll pretend to hold you as my hostage, and then I'll take you away, and then we'll split the proceeds once I sell this platinum. I think Dale got suckered into something. And I think when he got taken away, he was alive from this Corning plant, and then whoever was the real instigator of this scheme killed him. suckered him in so he could do this and then killed him. I really believe that. Now, of course, the big question is, who was this? And I guess it's still a big question mark. That's one of those that if I were to hit Mega Millions and become a billionaire or something, that would probably be the ones that I might want to put some time into. Just because the perpetrator of this had to be somebody close to Dale. Had to be. So I don't find it strange. I think it's fairly straightforward to analyze it. But Susie answered, once again, I'm not criticizing. If that's what you think, fine by me. I'm just giving my opinion on it. Who is it? Shelley said too many to name just one. Lisa Dyer said Dorianne Myers. It probably does fall in the strange category, being that her house and her car got burned and where the car was found many, many miles away. In fact, I've thought about one of my cruises in my car to take in the upcoming months, maybe cruise way down to where a car was eventually found. It's gone through my mind. Not that hard to analyze for that one, but it certainly is unique, maybe bordering on strange. Lisa says, I think it's how I discovered you. Okay, Lisa, if you were out there, interesting. Joe answered Colton Barrera. I know that disappearance, not featured on Unfound yet. Cindy, another family member representing Lacey Buenfil, who went missing a few hours north of here. In fact, I went up to the location, met Cindy. It's going way, way back to like 2018 when we all got together out there. Went into a very shady part of Florida, I'm here to tell you. To me, not strange, not that hard to analyze, but certainly very sad. Another Brian Schaefer answer. Edna says Tom Brown, and she includes a couple that have not been included on Unfound yet. Andrea says Ryan Stucca. I'm going to read the entire post. I think the strangest has to be Ryan Stucca, not so much the original disappearance, but the fact that he hasn't been found. There just aren't many places he could be. I thought his mom was amazing during the interview. She was. She has such a positive attitude. I hope she gets answers soon. As we've learned with searches, they fail. I still don't have a very overtly scientific answer for you. But, of course, people, young people walking off into the woods and disappearing, very common. Old people do it too. Andrew, if that's what you think, once again, fine by me. I'm not here to argue with you. It's just, I look at it, being that this is my job, it's not one that seems strange to me, and it seems fairly straightforward what happened. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. But the facts as we know them, it just says this is a walk-off like many others like this that have happened. Jenna says, Jessica Haringa, once again, I know that disappearance not featured on Unfound. Of course, the guy that allegedly did something to her has gone to jail. She's still missing, though. Another Tom Brown answer. Somebody, Matthew, once again, not something that was included in the podcast. Paul Sanders. Jill, member of the think tank, longtime supporter of Unfound, coming in with Paul Sanders from Arizona. If you remember, his disappearance was the one. His truck, got pulled over, and then the truck pulled away, and the cops allegedly gave chase. Well, Jill and one of my assistants, Carrie, along with Paul's sister, have done a lot of great work since that episode came out. And, well, maybe some things aren't exactly as they were understood to be for his disappearance. So is it strange? I don't know. Given that there seems to be new information, it does make it hard to analyze, but probably still not at the top of my list. But Jill, I can't argue with Jill for putting Paul Sanders on here, especially given how much time she's put into it. The three, Nina's saying, of course, Molly Miller and Colt Haynes in Oklahoma. not hard to analyze for me. I predicted that their bodies would be found very close to where the car ended up being. I was correct on that. We're still waiting to hear causes of death. Maybe we're never going to get that. And then certainly that's going to make things very, very difficult. And then we'll be in like Tom Brown territory. But once again, not one that would be at the top of my list. Is it strange? People going missing after car chases. Actually, we've covered a few like that. So, in fact, we just talked about Paul Sanders, and there have been a couple others like that. So, I don't know. Once again, not criticizing. I'm not here. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying it from my point of view. Just would not be at the top of my list. And then Danielle says Michael Dunahee. That is not a disappearance. She says keeps her up at night. Is it a disappearance? I'm not familiar with the name. Not familiar with that. So here are some of mine. Now that I've gotten through this list, all the answers. Jason Jolkowski, as somebody already answered, that is still at the top of my list for reasons that I've stated over and over and over. Another one is Trevelyan Evans. Of course, that's coming to us from Wales. Of course, that's a Heather Grotman. She was the guest. That's a Heather Grotman episode. Trevelyan Evans just going at her job or business, little shop she had, said, put a little sign on, I'll be back. Never came back. Very, very difficult to analyze, especially given it's this little town. It's not, some violent area. It was during the day and on and on. And seemingly her husband has an alibi. He was at their home, wherever he was, miles away, or I guess over there, kilometers away. Trevelyan Evans, certainly difficult for me to analyze. Very, very difficult. Very difficult. There's really nothing that you can really latch on to even look at disappearances like it that have been solved to try to apply. You don't even have anything like that. Very difficult. I would also put on this list, maybe some of you are going to be a little surprised by this, is Jesse Ross. I've gone somewhat publicly on the record saying that I think for some reason he just walked down the street and went into the Chicago River. But that doesn't leave me very satisfied. And I realize there are people out there who believe that, did he get picked up by somebody? He had enough of the conference. Was he walking back to his other hotel and got, car came along and picked him up? Or some people believe being that he wanted to get into the record business or whatever it was. He wanted to go to some of these clubs and drop off whatever he was going to drop off. I'm not inclined to believe any of that. But still, from my point of view, tough to analyze because the most likely choice, him going down and going to the river, it just feels thin, like anorexically thin. So that would be on my list. One that I also bring up for a lot of different reasons, Evelyn Piper. She is the woman who claimed that, she was going to Israel to get married. She wasn't Jewish. She didn't have a passport, and her family didn't think she was dating anybody. But that's what she told them that she was doing on the phone. And then, of course, her car ended up being found at the local airport. Tough from my standpoint, and a person who wants to get these things right and make a prediction on them. Difficult, and especially considering I don't think that Evelyn Piper had any mental health issues. So no passport, not Jewish, no manner to life, but she's going to Israel to get married. Go figure that one out. I don't know. And then also disappearance that we featured toward the end of 2024. In fact, this is the last episode that came out before I took a little hiatus to take care of my sleeping issues. Keith Mann, of course, he was the guy who went out with a friend of his or coworker and the coworker's girlfriend. They went four-wheeling and then they dropped them off. And then the next morning, Keith's car is found next, where he usually parked it to go to his parents, never seen again. In fact, I think there was just a comment on the YouTube channel, on that page of the YouTube channel, about his disappearance, talking about somebody murdering him or something. But that's also a one that tough to analyze and be really, really sure that you're getting it correct. You have to try to figure out, well, if he really did walk off, why did he park the car next to his parents' place? Why would he do that? But he's the only one that could have done that. Who else would have known that he does that? And you start getting into that round and round and round and round and round, and it's hard to come to solid answers. So those are some of mine. Jason Jokowski, Trevelyan Evans, Jesse Ross, Evelyn Piper, Keith Mann. And once again, if you want to put your own answers to this question, you can do so in the comments. The original post was, what is the strangest unsolved case Unfound is covered? And like I said, some people put some answers in here that are not in Unfound's catalog. That's how it goes sometimes. Hello, Glenn. Glenn says, the missing podcast, I didn't know that existed, just released a new episode about Jason Jokowski. Nothing new, although they never mentioned the one theory about him possibly never leaving home. I guess it's an idea. I know it's been brought up to me both publicly and privately. People have emailed me about it over the years. Of course, it's been almost 10 years since that, we featured that. Of course, the problem I would have with that is that means, who isn't exactly involved in this cover-up? Kelly, his mother, who went on to start a nonprofit organization and did all of these things. If that's so, man, she really put on a great show for everybody. I'm not saying that somebody wouldn't be capable of that. People can be shameless like that, but that is really, 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 really something. Once again, emails that I've gotten. Well, how do we know that the younger brother didn't do something to Jason and then they covered it up because they knew, well, Jason's now deceased and that means their other son's going to go to jail. I've gotten messages like that. I think that's a great Law and Order episode. Certainly people do crazy things to cover up for their children. But what exactly are we talking about? It still comes back to the same thing. Man, this family then really, 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 really put on a really great show. We could even, let's just say, once again, an example. Let's say Jason and his younger brother at home, and the younger brother's messing around with a gun that was in the home. I don't know if they owned any guns or not. I have no idea. This is just an example. And was messing around with, shot Jason, died. Could have happened. But wow. Not to mention, if it was an accident, I think that would be fairly straightforward. Well, maybe it wasn't an accident, maybe, and then we get into that. Well, maybe he meant to shoot him. And it gets all very complex, very fast, and it's just a little too much for me. Some people, obviously, it's not too much for some people out there that entertain that idea. It's just a little too much for me. So, so I get what you're saying, Glenn. Never mentioned the one theory about possibly never leaving home. Then that means there's some big cover up there. And I just don't see any signs of that. Of course, when Kelly was around for the 10, 15 years that she was running the Project Jason, she did a lot of media, and her story never wavered. And what I think is also usually a part of when people cover up things, whether it has to do with disappearances or murders or something where even nobody dies, but they usually are really intent on pointing the finger at somebody else, some other group. And certainly the Jolkowskis did not do that. In fact, you can go back and listen to my interview, even though it was early in my career. And Kelly's just like, we just have no idea. No idea. Now, I will admit a relatively new idea that was brought to me by a guy who's in the think tank now, and I think he's on vacation right now in Europe. I don't know if he's probably not. It's early in the next morning where he is now. But he has brought to me the idea, could it be that it actually was Jason's co-workers? That was there did Jason actually get to the car that day? Or was it some prank where the person pretended that she was going to pick him up or he was going to pick him up and didn't? And they had something else in store for him, some practical joke that went wrong. Seems unlikely to me, but that's just kind of where we are after 25 years of his disappearance. This is why it's very, very difficult to analyze. So there you go. I thought you might find that list interesting. Nobody's taken me up on putting any names in the chat tonight. Wow, everybody just sitting back and chilling tonight. No fingers on the keyboards tonight. Okay, that's fine. I'm happy to continue to talk. Let's now move on to one of the other topics that I have in the title for tonight's live show, and that is the disappearance, and now we know murder, of Genelle Bradford. This happened just a year after I moved away from the Pittsburgh area, but I remember it happening. I remember seeing the news out from me living in Las Vegas. April 99, this is just after I would have quit working at 7-Eleven, and actually 1999 ended up being a fantastic. It started out crap. 1999 ended up being a fantastic year. One of the best years of my life. True story. And year 2000 was pretty cool too. To be 30 again. But let me read this to you, and you're going to be like, what's going on here? Genelle, I'm going to read the Charlie Project page first, then I'm going to read an article on this. Genelle disappeared from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, technically Wilkinsburg, on April 27th of 1999. In June that year, her remains were found in the basement of a residence on North Avenue in Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania. Only 2 blocks, this is important to remember, only 2 blocks from where Genelle lived. She had been strangled. The home where she had been found had been abandoned for about a year before her remains were found by the new owner. The body found in the basement in Wilkinsburg was finally identified in June of 2026. This is exactly why I am bringing this up. Authorities stated the technology used to identify the body was not available when it was found. I'll get into that. They do not have a suspect in Genelle's death. So let me rearrange this all for you. So Genelle Bradford I forget, she was walking home from school or something, and she was a teenager. She didn't make it home. And just as it says, and this thing is, this was not known at the time. They kept this, I think, away from the public. Not long after she went missing, remains were found in an abandoned building only a couple blocks from where she lived. And still, it took 27 years to identify her. Now, wouldn't there have been a high degree of probability that that was Genelle? So I'm going to read this article. So this just happened. She was just identified this month, even though she went missing in April 99. And an unidentified body that fit Genelle's description was found only 2 blocks from where she lived. And still took to 2026 for it actually to be put all together. I'm going to read this article. Investigators recently identified the remains of Genelle Bradford. The 18-year-old woman went missing from Wilkinsburg in 1999. Her decomposed body was found months later, just 2 blocks from her home. That was a failure of the police agencies. That was a failure of the crime lab. It was a failure of law enforcement, hands down, says Doug Uhouse, the former Wilkinsburg lead investigator on the case. So he was the guy who was originally, charged with trying to figure out what happened to Genelle. He knew remains had been found just a couple months after that generally fit Genelle's description. And here he is in 2026 saying the police agency failed, the crime lab failed, everything else. Uhouse expressed doubt about the circumstances surrounding Bradford's disappearance and the discovery of her remains. I don't believe in coincidence. I have a young girl who goes missing 2 blocks away, 2 blocks away, and 2 months later, this body is found. When asked why I didn't push harder to identify the remains sooner, Uhouse said he was restricted by issues within the police department. And the reporter asked him, from that suspicion, you didn't feel the need to push harder and say this is Genelle or this may be Genelle? Uhouse claims now I was not allowed to push harder at that point. Well, Mr. Uhouse, Doug, why are we just now finding out about you then? Where have you been for the last 27 years? If you thought that those identified remains were Genelle's, and you thought that your police department wasn't doing enough, why did you keep quiet about that? You kept quiet because you wanted to keep your job, right? That's really honorable. Don't get me started on this crap. Do not get me started, people. Uhouse said he was reassigned from being the lead investigator on the case to a patrol unit, which he believes delayed the identification of Bradford's remains. Well, the news person knew about the remains being found, didn't he or she? He said the remains could have been identified within months if he had been allowed to continue his work. Another issue in the investigation was the use of dental records in an attempt to identify Bradford's remains. I do know that the dental records that were submitted were the wrong dental records, Uhouse said. The dental records submitted belonged to Bradford's grandmother rather than Genelle Bradford. Once again, Doug Uhouse, why have you kept this all a secret for 27 years? What's the deal? You think that your job's more important than information like this being released to the public? Is that what you think? This is why I say to all the families out there, you and the police are not on the same side. In fact, I will tell you, I've been reaching out regarding a certain disappearance. Can't tell you what it is. And I've sent messages a few times. Finally got back a message, an email from wherever I was sending this email. I got this address, sending it, and finally somebody responded. And this person said, well, it's an ongoing investigation, and we've decided we're not going to talk to the media and everything. I sent them back exactly what I'm telling all of you right now. I said, I respect your position, but here's what you should know. I've been doing this for 10 years. I've featured 400 disappearances. I've even testified in a murder trial. I've spoken at universities. I've been on TV and everything. And I'm telling you, it is a mistake to follow the the law enforcement's lead regarding how you handle the media. That is a mistake you will live to regret. There's a lot of things I've learned over the last 10 years, and that is one of them. If you want to go to start talking to the media and get the word out about this, about that, and police don't do it, it's an ongoing investigation. They are only looking out for themselves. They are not looking out for you. It's the biggest mistake families make, thinking they and the police are on the same side. They're kind of on the same side. Just kind of. Not totally. Maybe not even 50%. I'm not saying the police don't want that disappearance solved. And as I always, as I've told guests, yes, the police, yes, if somebody comes in someday and says, yes, I caused the disappearance of Jane Doe, I did it, I'm willing to fill out, sign the paperwork, and I'm going to be able to tell you where she is and where I disposed of her and everything, and I'll take her and she'll be there and everything. The police will do all of that happily. They'll sit down with the person. They'll take him to one of the interrogation rooms. They'll read him his rights. They'll turn the video on. They'll get the proper paperwork out. They'll take him out there. They'll do all of that. They'll do it. And so in that way, they are on your side. Outside of that, they're not on the family side. It's the hardest concept that families it's the hardest concept that they try to understand, that they don't get. They just don't get it. And this is another example of that. I'm sure the Bradford family thought police are going to do all they can. Man, they're going to do everything so correct. Obviously, this was bungled. Bungled. To the point that even this investigator who first worked on it, so caught up in it, obviously never went to the Bradford family and say, you know what, there were remains found down the street and we think it's Genelle. Because I think if that would have been said to the Bradford family, they certainly would have done media on that. Too many secrets. Too many CYAs cover your, whats. Too many people worried about their pensions. Too many people worried about their salaries. And you say, well, if he would have gone, he would have broken the law. Yeah. I want to see a prosecutor that's going to charge any investigator with this stuff. I want to see that. Not even done anonymously. Instead, Bradford just had to sit around for 27 years not knowing where Genelle was. She was right down the street the whole time, and I would say the police knew it, despite there not actually being scientific proof of it. It's one of those things. Did they not know what Genelle was wearing when she went missing? I mean, was the body naked or what? Could they just not even just use that? Would that not be enough? You'd think. Instead, we have this. Uhouse noted that the discrepancy in the dental record should have been apparent. Well, you were the investigator, Mr. Uhouse. It wasn't obvious, and the reporter, it wasn't obvious that it was dental records of an older woman and not a 17-year-old woman, the reporter asked. I can't comment on that. That's a forensics issue. Way to pass the buck, Doug. You are fantastic at passing the buck. This is why I'm going to keep saying it. Families do not listen to the police when it comes to dealing with the media. Unless unless there's some prosecutor that, there's some written gag order saying if you say anything, you're going to jail. Outside of that, you should be talking to me. You should be talking to YouTube channels. You're talking to local media, everything else. Don't go on those stupid shows like Dr. Phil. Other than that, don't go talk to psychics. Don't do that. Everything else should be on the table. The reason police don't want people going to the media is for reasons like this, because then it shows all of these mistakes they make. And just like the rest of us, we don't like our mistakes being made public. No different than you if you're an engineer, a teacher, an accountant, a truck driver, anything else. You don't want the mistakes you make in your private life and your job being exposed, right? It's the same way with the police. The problem is with the police, the stakes are much higher. And things go unsolved for decades. It's the only reason. They just don't want to look like idiots. It has nothing to do with justice and the law or anything. It just, they're worried about their reputations. That's it. Dr. Edward Cheppa, Genelle's former dentist, provided investigators dental records for Genelle and her family. Also commented on the mix-up. Wouldn't you be able to tell that's the dental records of an older woman, not a teenager? The reporter asked the dentist. I would, Cheppa said. Investigators would. The reporter asked. I would hope, the dentist said. Forensics, the reporter asked. Cheppa shook his head, saying yes, they should have been able to tell the difference. Although he was ultimately taken off the case, UL said it stayed with him. I can really tell. And that he often thought of Bradford. He said he was relieved to learn that the Allegheny County Police Department was reinvestigating the case. It makes me feel good. I have some closure for myself. Part of me was invested in it. Yeah, so much invested that you kept your mouth shut all these years. The death of Bradford has been ruled a homicide. I think she was strangled. At a news conference earlier this week, a sergeant with the Allegheny County Police Department said an investigation is continuing. So to break this down into a nutshell, young black woman goes missing, I think, walking home. A young black woman's body is found 2 blocks away from where she lived. And everybody didn't want to announce that we think that it's Genelle Bradford. And instead, it seems that it didn't even make it into the public sphere that the remains of a young black woman were even found. I mean, I will admit I didn't go back to newspapers.com to check this. But was there any announcement? Police are trying to identify, as we've seen, this happens many times all over the United States. Ask me how I know. Many times when, of course, remains are found, bodies found, do you know this person? These remains were found. Do you know this person? Here's what I know. If they would have, and maybe posting an actual picture would be a little too much. But a description, don't you think that would have been helpful to the public, Wilkinsburg? And don't you think that had you done that the public could have assisted, even if scientifically, for whatever reason, with DNA or whatever else, you weren't able to do it? And that's still unclear to me why they couldn't do it with DNA. Still very, very unclear. I mean, that's crazy, right? That's crazy. Young black woman goes missing. Young black woman's remains are found 2 blocks from her house. Takes 27 years to identify her. And it's not even announced that the body was even found. What is going on? This just should never happen. Ever. ever happen. So there you go. It's be much different if it were, let's say that a young black woman's body was found 50 miles away. Then would you automatically think that it would be Genelle Bradford? Probably not. Probably not. And then I get it. And then it's like, well, who could this be? And, you start checking databases. 2 blocks away from where she lived. Takes 27 years to identify her. I'm going to keep saying it. Should never happen. Never. But it did. Do not put your blind faith in the police. Moving on, want to go through a few things here before I get to Peter Madison. It looks like myself and friend of the podcast, Jeff Wise, will be doing some sort of show together. I'm guessing it will eventually end up playing on both of our channels. This came out of something I sent Jeff about, has he ever looked at other missing plane incidents? Of course, he's a Flight 370 expert. And I'm just asking, has he ever looked at other passenger planes or kind of planes with a lot of people on them that have gone missing, and try to compare and contrast? Has he ever done that? It was just really a casual question. And he gets back to me and says, hey, we should do a show on that. And I said, okay. And so what we've decided to do is we are going to do some sort of show on the 1990 disappearance of the Fawcett, Peru Boeing 727. This is not the 727 that disappeared from Africa. This is a Boeing 727 jet that was a charter or something, had been loaned out to some place in Europe. And a group of people were flying it back to where it was supposed to go. And it disappeared on the leg of the flight between Iceland and Newfoundland. So we got Iceland up there, and of course in the North Atlantic, and then Newfoundland, that's like the most eastern province of Canada. This jet with 16 people on it disappeared. Never been found. Kinda, sorta like Flight 370. And so Jeff and I are going to take a look at that disappearance. Nothing was ever found. Nothing ever washed up on shore. Although there might have been a Mayday call or something like that. But Jeff and I are going to take a look at that. Probably not going to get done. Of course, I still have the Atlantic series going on. But of course, on his channel, maybe we'll work something out. And so he's like studying up. He's the aviation expert. I am, he's the professional aviation expert. I'm the amateur aviation expert. And of course, he's been on many of these, Mayday air crash shows and been on Netflix and everything. So he's studying up on this disappearance of these 16 people in this jet. And then we're going to do a show on it. So I'm really, really, really looking forward to that. I, of course, will let you know when that is going to come out. Something else I need to announce, of course, as I've told all of you, Unfound is now being hosted by a new company called Believe, Bleav. I've moved away from Megaphone, started with Podomatic, went to Megaphone, and now I am with Believe, and it's been since the beginning of the month. Well, under their recommendation, this live show, which of course I make as a podcast, the audio part that comes out every Tuesday the next day. When I was with Megaphone, it was a separate feed. Believe recommended me to put the live shows back into the regular feed. So you will be getting these live shows on the same feed that you get the podcast that comes out every Friday from now on. So if you were wondering about that, somebody actually even posted about that in the group, and that is what is now. So they are now not on a separate feed. If you are subscribed to the podcast Unfound, the one that's been around for 10 years that comes out on Fridays, you are now going to be getting the live show on that feed as a podcast, whether you like it or not, if you were wondering. Moving on, what else do I want to talk about? Started my series called Your 2-Minute Disappearance Lesson. The first one is out, where I talk about private property. The next one was going to do it today. Instead, I decided to get a majority of Friday's episode done. Going to do it tomorrow. I'll be doing another one. And I think, what is the next topic going to be for 2 minutes? I am going to talk about, oh my goodness, I forget. I got a bunch of lists, so it's no big deal. There will be another one coming out tomorrow or the next day. And all these are very, very short, 2 minutes in length. That is it. Very short, very thick, you might say, lesson. A very specific lesson about disappearances. And I know what I'm going to do. The next one I'm going to do is on video. Capturing people on video and its use in disappearances. I'm going to do that tomorrow, so be looking for that on the YouTube channel. In fact, what I want to do is I want to just take one day to do a lot of them, because they're only 2 minutes, and I've already done the notes on a lot of them. So that is something new. I'm also going to be putting those, of course, on the new website, the missingpersonsconsulting.com. Do not forget about that. Do you need help out there? Anybody, family members need help out there? You can find me at missingpersonsconsulting.com. Sign up for a consultation. I'll be posting some of these videos on that website. So your 2-minute disappearance lesson, or Y2MDL. Be looking for some of those that will be coming out. Also, one of the Unfound Now episodes, it seemingly has been resolved. This is from Nevada. This was the disappearance of Richard Cleaves, Cleavs. Went missing from northern Nevada, allegedly, seemingly, I guess. He had one of his friends had gotten stuck out in the desert somewhere, allegedly. And this person had called Richard to go help. Richard seemingly was doing that, but never made it there. And then his van was found abandoned. Somebody posted on that video on the YouTube channel that Richard Cleaves' remains have been found not far from where his van was. I think then, will we get a cause of death announced publicly? I don't know. Might not be able to even tell. But I think I did predict that one. I think that is one that I think I might have gotten right. So be looking for additional news out there. If I see any more details, right now all I have is what somebody posted on YouTube in the comments section. But I did look it up, and I think it is true. But it's nothing, no news is very detailed at this point. But you want to go back and look at that Unfound Now. Came out last summer. Richard Cleaves, Cleavs. He went missing in northern Nevada. All right, so let's get to my analysis. Oh, no. I want to do one more thing. This was something I put in very late in the process of putting together this Unfound Live tonight. Have any of you heard of the Putney Pusher? That's Putney and then Pusher, the Putney Pusher. Have any of you ever heard of this person? I'd never heard of it until today. This is something that happened in England 10 years ago. And so I'm going to read this article, but it does have at least a little bit to do with disappearances. This is what I find very, this kind of thing, even though it's not technically a disappearance, this is the kind of thing that I still find interesting, that I think can be applied to looking at disappearances. And this Putney Pusher, it even had its own Wikipedia page. A millionaire banker with ties to the British royal family has been arrested for allegedly being London's notorious Putney Pusher. A jogger filmed pushing a woman in front of a moving bus, almost killing her. The suspect was arrested on Monday, so today, at his $1.8 million home in West London, nearly a decade after surveillance footage captured the terrifying near-death encounter on London's Putney Bridge. That's where it gets the name. London's Putney Bridge in 2017. The long viral footage showed the jogger callously knocking down the passing pedestrian, sending her sprawling into the road. And I've now that I know about this, I've seen this video. Sending her sprawling into a road, with a bus driver swerving just in time to avoid rolling over her head. 15 minutes later, the man ran back across the bridge in the opposite direction and was confronted by the victim while she was still being helped, but he ignored her and ran on by. The victim, 33 years old, miraculously suffered only minor injuries. The suspect is now a 44-year-old decorated British Army veteran who served in several major conflicts, but they did not identify him by name. He has familial connections to some of Europe's royal dynasties, including the UK's reigning House of Windsor. After leaving the military, he reportedly has a successful career in banking and has advised multiple wealthy clients. I hope you all will go out and find this video. London's Metro Police confirmed an arrest had been made, while stressing that inquiries continue. The bizarre attack, which happened around 7:40 a.m. on May 4th, 2017, went unsolved for years, even after London investigators interviewed 50 people and arrested 3 suspects. However, no charges were ever filed, and cops closed the case in 2018. The shocking incident made national headlines and even inspired a play called Once Upon a Bridge, written by Irish playwright Sonia Kelly. Oliver Selbris, the bus driver, said he thinks about what happened every time he drives over the Putney Bridge. Whenever I'm on the bridge, I look very carefully at the pedestrians on the sidewalk. I can't help it. I wouldn't say it haunts me, but it's not something I can easily forget. I'm glad my reactions were quick on that day, or it would have ended very differently, both for me and the woman who was pushed. Her head was only a few inches from the bus and the wheel, even after I swerved to avoid her. So this woman was walking along the bridge, minding her own business. This jogger comes by, pushes her. She goes into the street, almost gets run over. The guy keeps going. It's captured right on the video. And then, as I just read, the guy had the gall to run back over the same bridge. She's still there. Witnesses are still there. And he keeps going. And he went unidentified for 9 years. Now, my point is, he was captured on video. They got a description of him. There were witnesses. Still, it took 9 years to identify him. And I think this is where I got the idea that I'm going to make video my next 2-minute disappearance lesson, because this is an excellent example of how video is not as helpful as everybody makes it out to be. They knew what he was wearing. It wasn't some woman who faked it, just jumped in front of a bus and said she got pushed. It was right there on video. The guy just knocked her over and kept going. Didn't give a dang. Still took 9 years to identify him. Now, how was that eventually done? I don't know. It's not in this article. I could not find any articles written about how this was eventually figured out as to who this guy was. I don't know. But what's interesting to me is, nobody followed him. Nobody called 911 or whatever you do over there in England. But the Putney Pusher. I urge you to go find the video. I'm sure it's right here on YouTube somewhere. And it even has its own Wikipedia page. This was a huge mystery in London for 9 years. And finally, I guess they have the right guy. So when it comes to disappearances where video is playing a prominent part, Kyle Fleischman, Brian Schaefer, Rashawn Francis, people who were caught on video, Joel Akridge, people who were caught on video right before their disappearances. And we're all like, well, or I'm not like this, but many people out there are. It's on video. How can't they solve this? It's right there on video. Here's another example. It's very common. Now, why is this? Like I said, my perception is, for at least for disappearances, if it doesn't actually show the actual disappearance happening, like somebody getting dragged into a car, somebody jumping off a bridge or something like that, the video doesn't mean anything. But I guess the Putney Pusher example is even more extreme. Even when you catch the crime on video and there are witnesses, and even when the perpetrator comes through that area again, there's no guarantee that the crime is going to be solved. It very well may be that we need maybe to think about, think the same way for disappearances as well. Maybe even if we had video of a disappearance happening, it wouldn't help that much. Video. Totally over. I realize that it helps sometimes. I get it. But we forget about all the times when video is not helpful at all. Overrated. So the Putney Pusher, look it up. Just one of those things. Once again, maybe I'm just, I'm maybe more geeked out on it than any of you are, but still. All right, let's get to Peter Madison. Well, who is Peter Madison? This is the disappearance that I am going to analyze tonight. Not quite as intricate and, well, it's certainly, I guess, suspicious, I guess. We don't have all the facts like we did with Sherry Holland or some of these other disappearances that that I've picked out over the past year. But the reason I picked this one out is because it occurred. Here's what I did for this week. I went to NamUs and I just looked for any disappearances that have happened on June 15th of any year. Found quite a few that I took a look at. Simply because today is June 15th, I thought, well, let's take a look at a disappearance that happened on the same date as the live show in which it is featured. And coincidentally, I did not plan this. This disappearance happened right down the street from me in Treasure Island, which really is the little municipality down from where I used to live in Madeira Beach. So you get down there. If you're going south from here, it's Bel Air Beach, Indian Rocks Beach, Reddington Beach. And then you get to Madeira Beach, where I used to live. And then after that is an area called Treasure Island. This is where this disappearance occurred. So I found a disappearance that happened on June 15th of 1986. And it occurs right down the street from me. So weird. So that's why I picked it out for tonight. So Peter Madison, and I have an article that I'm going to read as well. This is the Charlie Project write-up. Madison was last seen in Treasure Island, Florida on June 15th of 1986. He spent the evening at a friend's home, then drove away in his white 1976 Ford cargo van en route to his rented house. A photo of his van is posted with this case summary. Madison apparently never arrived home and has never been heard from again. His clothes and other belongings, as well as his daughter's elderly blind dog, which he was caring for, were left behind at his house. And there were no indications of forced entry. Over a month after his disappearance, his van was found at 9th Street and Burlington Avenue North in St. Pete, Florida. I don't know that. I'm guessing I've been near that intersection. I can't pick it out, though. Without going to Google Street View, I don't know where that is. The van was parked there, but it had been stripped of interior furnishings and parts. So was this part of the disappearance, or did somebody afterwards who knew nothing about the disappearance come along and strip it down? It's unclear. I'll take my best shot at that. Madison was retired at the time of his disappearance. I think he was into his 60s. He lived quietly and frequented bars in downtown St. Pete. It's uncharacteristic of him to leave without warning or to abandon the dog, which he was very attached to. There have been no transactions on his credit cards or bank accounts since he went missing. Foul play is suspected in his case. All right, now I want to read the article that was written. Let me find it here. Local news. All right, this article, of course, he went missing in 86, but this article is from 1987. And it's from the Tampa Bay Times. Newspaper still exists. And this was written not quite a year after Peter went missing. Some interesting details in this. So from the Tampa Bay Times, May 6th of 1987, about Peter's disappearance. For 10 months, police have been searching for 64-year-old Treasure Island man who vanished mysteriously. Police fear that Peter Struther Madison may have been the victim of a crime. They've asked for the public's help. Madison was last seen the night of June. It says June 13th, but it's June 15th on NamUs. Police say he spent part of the evening at a friend's house watching TV and then drove away in his van. Madison didn't return to the house he rented. 2 days later, a relative found in the house Madison's clothing, other belongings, and a dog he was caring for. More than a month later, Madison's van, as I stated, was found, and it had been stripped. Since June of 86, Madison has not used his charge cards, no transactions. Investigators said, we think foul play may be involved. Before his disappearance, Madison often visited downtown St. Pete. Officers walked along downtown streets shortly after the van was found again last week, showing Madison's picture and handing out flyers. Police found some people who thought they recognized Madison, but nothing was uncovered that will explain his disappearance. Of course, I think about eyewitness sightings so many months or whatever after. I'm not inclined to believe any of them. Kathy Madison, daughter of the missing man, said her father is not the type to suddenly leave home for a long time, especially without contacting her. There were no signs of him wanting to leave. If he was going to be gone for any length of time, he would have closed the sliding glass door in his place. I believe my father was murdered. Yet she says she can't prove that. After months of contacting her father's friends and acquaintances across the country, Miss Madison has come up with nothing. Miss Madison last saw her father about a month before he disappeared. He helped her move to Georgia. At the same time, her father agreed to take care of her 15-year-old Maltese Terrier. Her father was very attached to the dog, which is blind. He would not have abandoned it. Madison, a widower, was retired and lived quietly in his beach community for about 4 years. He was not wealthy, his daughter said. She said she knows of no reason that anyone would want to harm him. Police described Madison as 6'3" and 170 pounds. Now, here's where it gets interesting. His last name was not originally Madison. His real last name was Gruesbeck, Gruesbeck. He was born Peter Scott Gruesbeck, but he legally changed his last name to Madison in 1947 when he was in the Merchant Marines. Madison has brown hair with touches of gray. He has brown eyes. Miss Madison, his daughter, said he has a deep voice and often dressed casually in polo shirts and slacks. So that is the information, the media information on Mr. Madison, burping, otherwise known as Peter Scott Gruesbeck. And I get the idea that his daughter did not even know that was not. So she ended up going by Madison. I don't think that she ever knew that her father changed his last name. I don't think so. Gruesbeck was his original last name. I don't know. So we have this guy into his 60s, goes to a friend's house, allegedly going home, doesn't make it home. Van is found a month later. It's all stripped down. He's missing. So as you know, here's what if this were a consultation, if somebody, and I think his daughter's still alive, if she were to come to me in a consultation situation at missingpersonsconsulting.com, this is probably how it would go. Here's the questions that I would have to ask his daughter. Certainly, I'd need to know more about her father. Of course, how much did she really know about her father? It would be hard to tell. If she's not living with him, he has his own life, she has her own life. Does he have any other kids? I don't know. But I'd have to certainly go to those areas that I usually like to avoid, and that is like sexuality. When it says that he was with a friend watching TV, I mean, there's nothing wrong with two guys sitting around watching TV. But for purposes of a disappearance, I would have to ask, were they more than friends? Is that a possibility? I realize that, he was married to your mother and they got together and had you and everything. But I just got to ask. This is something, of course, that I would have to ask about. Certainly have to ask about addictions. Certainly have to ask about mental health. Being that he was retired, and I read another article where it said that he didn't have that much money. It's not like he was well off or anything. Well, if he was retired, what was exactly he doing with his time from day to day? Was he bored out of his mind? Did he have any hobbies? Certainly need to know a lot more about Peter Madison, just from that standpoint. Also, who was this friend? Did this daughter know this friend? Did Peter ever talk about this friend? Like I said, I get the idea that it was a guy. Very well could have been a woman. Either way. Who was this friend? What is this person's name? What do you know about this person? How did your father know this person? Had you ever heard of this person before the disappearance occurred? Of course, need to know a lot about this friend, because let's just admit something. If Peter were a woman and this friend were a guy, and the guy said, "Oh yeah, she was here, and then she just left, and I don't know what happened to her," we know what we would think of that. We would think that that's probably not what happened. Probably not. Very possible. I mean, hey, women are living men's places all the time, and no harm's coming to them. And certainly there have been disappearances where women have left men's places and went missing, and the guy had nothing to do with it. Certainly. But if Peter were a woman and this friend is a guy, we know what we'd be thinking. So this we know what we would thinking. So this is why I have to portray it this way. I'd also want to know, did Peter ever go to this area where the van was found? This 9th Street and whatever avenue it was. Like I said, I've been down to St. Pete enough times to probably say I've been close to this area, but really don't go down there that often. So I'd want to know about that. There were some articles written in 1986 after it happened that Peter was known to walk down there along the water. I'd need to know if this was true. How long would he walk? Certainly need to know a lot more about that. Certainly want to know about his health. Any ideas that he had been diagnosed with something, terminal cancer or anything like that. Certainly that would be an important part of the discussion to maybe think, are we sure that, this wasn't some sort of suicide, terminal cancer, and didn't want to go through all of that. Can't blame him. And also in talking, maybe to his daughter, if she would be the only one to talk to, what was this whole name change thing? What was this all about? Grusbeck, not the worst last name. Certainly better than Hitler. So did he just want to go to something maybe that was easier to spell? Or, being that it was 1947 after World War II, did he think that it maybe, is that a German last name? Did he think that it sounded too German? Did he have some, a fascination with James Madison, one of the founding fathers of the United States? Why did he pick Madison? It all matters. I mean, I know some of these things may seem trivial, but to me, it all would matter in looking at this. So these are questions that I'd really want to know if I really, really, wanted to really, really get everything right. Of course, I don't have these answers. So as far as analysis goes, you have to take myself back to the 1980s. So what are the odds? So I have to think of it this way. How likely is it that a guy in his 60s leaves, is seemingly headed home? At least that's what this friend thought. The guy doesn't get home. The vehicle is found parked. Of course, there's no guarantee that he even put it there. But that he goes missing, the vehicle is vandalized, and those two things aren't connected. Now, of course, we've had a lot of, abandoned cars in Unfound's history. How many of those missing people's vehicles have been vandalized? Not many. Of course, Dorian Myers has got burnt. I guess that's being vandalized. Tyler North's got vandalized. And what do we think? Of course, Dorian Myers most likely murdered. Tyler North certainly murdered. People went to jail. But those were burned. This van wasn't burned. But I think what it shows us is probably, if we had a longer trend, more examples, that it would show us when a missing person's car is vandalized or burned or broken into or whatever else, the person probably most likely was murdered. Like with Donnie Smatlack, remember his car wasn't vandalized, but whoever put it there left the windows down and snow got inside it and ruined the interior. That's kind of a vandalism. So I think I'm inclined to believe that Peter was actually murdered. Of course, this is a disappearance that's still unsolved 40 years later. But then we have to start thinking, okay, he said he was going home, but instead he went somewhere and ran into somebody who killed him, and then the person left the van there. I don't think that happened. Certainly my opinion could change if I were to find more about this friend, this friend, especially if it's a woman. This would make it, I guess, less likely that the friend murdered him. But what if we were to find out that if it was a female, that she was actually married or just gotten out of a relationship, or she was estranged from her husband? That certainly would be really, really relevant to Peter's disappearance. Certainly. The problem is there's nothing out there to say, what happened here. But I am going to put this on the list of my things to do, see if I can track down Peter's daughter, especially since I live here. She, even though I'm kind of coming out of nowhere on this, maybe she'd be motivated to talk to me simply because, of course, because of my history of 10 years, but also because I live in the area. I'm inclined to think that Peter Madison was murdered. I'm inclined to think that most likely this friend and he, if it's a guy, got into some argument, and then the guy went and ditched the van, maybe even left the keys in or the windows down or a door open. Maybe this person even vandalized it himself, because other scenarios, the way that everything's been written here, are hard to understand. Well, if the friend said he was going home, well, then why didn't he end up home? Maybe he just lied. Well, people lie, missing people lie. But given, like I said, that the van was harmed, wasn't burned, but vandalized and everything, I think that if we had a lot of body of evidence on this, we could scientifically say that the odds of this being a murder are very high. And so thus we have to look at the last person who saw him. Now, what exactly happened there, I don't know. But if they were drinking and, could it be some drugs were involved or mental health issues or what, as we now know, given we have cameras and everybody puts their lives online and everything, we see all sorts of videos of people losing their minds for all sorts of no good reasons. Of course, road rage and everything else. People that are friends, they start fighting about something and suddenly, shots are being fired. So I don't think that my idea on this is outrageous. Probably, who knows what police really did do back then. Probably, I'm guessing they chose to not doubt this friend's story. Whereas if I would have, if this were happening now, I'd be telling the police if they wanted to talk to me, or I'd be telling Peter's family, you probably need, even if that friend didn't do it, you probably need to look at maybe people connected to that friend, especially if the friend is a woman. Now, if it's a guy, then the odds are much higher that he did it himself. But it's a woman, you need to start looking at the men around that woman. So that's Peter Madison. Once again, went missing on this date 40 years ago, right down there in Treasure Island, Florida. And you should know, Treasure Island does not have a reputation. Of course, way busier populated now than back then. Not a reputation for being violent at all. Very touristy area, very low-key, slow, laid-back area. Whereas where the van was found, probably not like that. That's getting toward the city and definitely a different type of area. All right, let's get to Friday's episode. And I'm very pleased to announce that you are finally going to get to hear from Caleb King, a guy that I've gotten to know decently well. In fact, my assistant Eric has gotten to know Caleb way better than I have. Caleb King works for the CGIS, the Coast Guard Investigative Service. And he is the guy who just a few years ago, it's a fascinating story about how he found out about Teresa Hickman and Angela Westbury's disappearance. You talk about the luck of the draw. And he is my guest on Friday. First, we talk about him. We talk about what the CGIS does. And then we spend the second half of his interview talking about how he got involved in looking into the disappearances of Teresa Hickman, Angela Westbury, how he ended up coming up with the Hanna brothers names, and he mentioned some other names during this interview, and clarifies and expounds on topics covered just a month ago when I had Angela's sisters, Denise and Anita, as guests. Fascinating how Caleb got involved and how he was able to put so many pieces together 40 years after these disappearances occurred, and how he came up with the Hanna brothers names and some other names. You're going to get to hear about it Friday. The interview is like 2 hours and 15 minutes, so you expect 2 episodes on Friday. So there you go. You're going to hear from a guy in an agency that I don't think any of you even knew existed, the CGIS, the Coast Guard Investigative Service. So there you go. That is it. And then we'll get back to some other Atlantic disappearances next week. I'm very excited about that as well. So there you go. That is the live show for June 15th of 2026. I hope you found it informative. I hope you enjoyed it. Not much commenting going on tonight. Everybody took the comment section tonight. Everybody decided to, as they say, Ed Denzel and chill tonight, I guess. So that's it. Good to see all of you. Do not be victims out there. Keep your heads on swivels. Do not end up on my podcast. Charlie, if you are still in here, say hi to your sons for me. And we'll do this all again next week. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Good night.